performing for throngs of cheering GIs in World War II and Vietnam. It was once impossible to imagine a time when the first question that needed to be answered about the most popular comedian in American history would be, who was Bob Hope, and why did he matter? By the time he died, on July 27, 2003, 2 months after his 100th birthday, Hope's reputation was already fading, tarnished, or being actively disparaged. He had, unfortunately, stuck around too long. The comedian of the century, who began his vaudeville career in the 1920s and was still headlining TV specials in the 1990s, continued performing well into his dotage, and a younger generation knew him mainly as a cue card reading antique, cracking dated jokes about buxom beauty queens and Gerald Ford's golf game. World's last Bob Hope fan dies of old age, The Onion's fake headline announced a year before his death. Writer Christopher Hitchens expressed the disaffection of many of the baby boom generation in an online dismissal of Hope just a few days after his passing. To be paralyzingly, painfully, hopelessly unfunny is a serious drawback, even lapse, in a comedian. And the late Bob Hope devoted a fantastically successful and well-remunerated lifetime to showing that a truly unfunny man can make it as a comic. There is a laugh here, but it is on us. Hope never recovered from the Vietnam years, when his hawkish defense of the war, close ties to President Nixon, who actively courted Hope's help in selling his Vietnam policies to the American people, and the country club's smugness of his jibes about anti-war protesters and long-haired hippies all made him a political pariah for the peace and love generation. His tours to entertain U.S. troops during World War II had made him a national hero. By the turbulent 1960s, he was a court-approved jester, the establishment's comedian. Hardly a badge of honor, in an era when hipper, more subversive comics, from Mort Saul and Lenny Bruce to George Carlin and Richard Pryor, were showing that stand-up comedy could be a vehicle for personal expression, social criticism, and political protest. Even before Hope became a doddering relic, he had become an anachronism. Yet the scope of Hope's achievement, viewed from the distance of a few years, is almost unimaginable. By nearly any measure, he was the most popular entertainer of the 20th century, the only one who achieved success, often #1 rated success, in every major genre of mass entertainment in the modern era: vaudeville, Broadway, movies, radio, television, popular song, and live concerts. He virtually invented stand-up comedy in the form we know it today. His face, voice, and stage mannerisms, the nose, the lopsided smile, the confident sashaying walk, and the ever-present golf club, made him more recognizable to more people than any other entertainer since Charlie Chaplin. A tireless stage performer who traveled the country and the world for more than half a century, doing live shows for audiences in the thousands, he may well have been seen in person by more people than any other human being in history. His achievements as an entertainer, however, only hint at the breadth and depth of his impact. For the way he marketed himself, managed his celebrity, cultivated his brand, and converted his show business fame into a larger, more consequential role for himself on the public stage, Bob Hope was the most important entertainer of the century. Viewed from the largest historical perspective, the way he intersects with the grand themes of the century, from the greatest generation's crusade to preserve democracy in World War II to the social, political, and cultural upheavals of the 1960s and 1970s, one could argue, without too much exaggeration, that he was the only important entertainer. His life almost perfectly spanned the century, and to recount his career is to recapitulate the history of modern American show business. He began in vaudeville, first as a song and dance man, and then as an MC and comedian, working his way up from the amateur shows of his Cleveland hometown to headlining at New York's legendary Palace Theater. He segued to Broadway, where he co-starred in some of the era's classic musicals, appeared with legends such as Fanny Brice and Ethel Merman, and introduced standards by great American composers such as Jerome Kern and Cole Porter. Hope became a national star on radio, hosting a weekly comedy show on NBC that was America's #1 rated radio program for much of the early 19th.